Hey, what is up, guys? Bryce Bauer here. Welcome back to the Relationships Made Simple for Men podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about when you should leave an argument or a fight. This is a really common question because most couples do get into disagreements and fights. And depending on your attachment style, you will react differently whenever your nervous system is activated. If you have an avoidant dismissive attachment style, then you probably don't stick around very long. You say whatever, or you just walk away, put your hand up, and you're gone. If you have a more fearful, anxious attachment style, then you're more likely to stay in the conversation because you really want to get it fixed. And that helps relax your nervous system to be in connection, even if it's intense and even if you're fighting. So, the first thing I want you to think about, and the first thing you need to understand, so the first thing that you have to be able to do before you can know when to stay or go is to be able to assess how activated you really are. A lot of times, guys especially don't want to admit how afraid or angry they actually are. They will dismiss those feelings, disown those feelings. They'll say, I'm fine, whatever. It's you. You're the one who's causing all this. Look at me. I'm calm over here. But that's not necessarily the case. The one who appears more calm isn't always the one who's least activated. Sometimes just having a flat affect is a strategy to deal with all of the turmoil that's going on in here. So you might actually be feeling frozen or resentful, or you might just be able to go somewhere else in your mind and appear calm when you're really not. And if you have a partner that's very expressive, maybe she's loud, talking fast, using a lot of words, it can be easier to point the finger and say, yeah, you're the problem. Look, you're doing all this stuff over there, all this animation, and there's all this drama on your side. And look at me. I'm cool over here. So you have to be able to assess how activated you really are and to understand some of the strategies that you may use when conflict comes up. And this can be difficult. Some guys have never thought about what strategy they use when conflict comes up, and they have no way to assess what's going on inside of them. They have an impulsive reaction to conflict, and they've created stories to back up their stance that what they're doing is okay, that they're fine. But usually, this is their armor. This is the way that they protect themselves, defend themselves. They go into their shell, they go internal, they stonewall. And I know this strategy well because this is my go to strategy. And I've really had to work on getting into my experience and not putting up the wall when Jenny and I have some type of conflict and not pointing the finger and being able to look within and see what's happening in me. What is the wound that's being touched here? How am I reacting to it and dealing with it? My brain automatically wants to make up a story as to why Jenny is the problem and I'm not doing anything wrong. But at least in our relationship, the truth is more often that I'm feeling a intense emotion around something, and so is Jenny. And that's really what we're disagreeing or arguing or fighting about. And the more that I've learned to understand our patterns and my pattern, how I show up, the more quickly I can assess what am I doing here that's causing disconnection in our relationship. It doesn't mean that Jenny might have to own something on her side, but I really have to be responsible for the way that I'm showing up in the conflict, even if Jenny is the one that made the mistake. And this might be more tricky in your relationship if you're new to this, if you and your partner are both new to this, and she's very volatile. Maybe she's even abusive, or maybe you're volatile and you're abusive, or both of you. But either way, the first move is to get clear on the strategies that you use when you show up in a conflict to assess your level of activation. If I'm thinking of a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being extremely activated, the most upset you could possibly be, and a 0 being completely calm, like truly calm and at peace with yourself and the world. If you're at a 5 or 6, that means that you're probably not going to be able to do any of the relational moves that anyone is going to teach you. You're in survival mode, you're in your strategy, you're in your trauma response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And that's what needs to be addressed first. You have to work with your level of activation and get it below at least a 5. I see this all the time with couples, and this is why I have a job, is that they come in and they're both activated about something, or they come into the session and they start to get activated about something and they want to try to work it out or fight about it while they're both activated, and it just doesn't work. Maybe if you have a ton of skills, you can go there sometimes and both of you can hold it because there's enough safety and security in the relationship. But if you're new to this, there's no way. You'll fall into the rut of the old patterns and nothing is going to get resolved. And a big part of that is that our activation in our nervous system and the stories that come along with it don't tell us the truth. They only tell us what we need to hear in order to keep ourselves safe. I'll say that again. When we're activated, our nervous system tells us what we need to hear in order to keep ourselves safe, which isn't always the truth. In fact, it's often not the truth. And to put this more into context, if you were a human thousands of years ago walking across Africa and you heard a rustling in the grass, your nervous system has to tell you that that could be a lion. In fact, it probably is a lion and you should get away because there could be real danger there. The people that got away and ran and got up in the trees or got back with the other people were the ones that survived. And so our nervous system has evolved over thousands of years to always look for threat. It doesn't matter if we're wrong a lot of the time. We just have to be right when it matters. And so fast forward to 2025, our brains and our nervous systems are still doing the same thing. They're always looking for threat and assessing. And it looks a little bit different than the lion situation. Now it's more about, can I trust this person? Are they going to take resources and energy away from me? Are they going to yell at me or blame me? Because that can feel really scary. Are they going to ruin my reputation? Usually these are not life-threatening situations, but they feel the same in the body. They feel the same way that it will feel if a lion is chasing us. Our body doesn't know the difference. It just says threat. And so you think about two people getting together that don't understand the mechanics of their brain and don't know how to work with their own activation. And every time they walk in the house, there's the possibility of threat. It doesn't feel safe. Some people never really feel safe in their own house or in the same room as their partner. If there's been enough damage, just continual fighting and damage and patterns, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. And even when it does get a little bit better, the body doesn't trust it. It's not supposed to. Unfortunately, it's really easy to create negative patterns and for those to stick in the brain and in our memory than it is to resolve and repair ruptures. The brain and body need to experience a different interaction hundreds of times before it starts to trust again and relax. So you can see what we're up against here when we move in with someone or share resources with someone or have children with someone. There's so many ways to get it wrong given the operating system we have. And it really takes a lot of effort and usually help to work with our threat responses here. I find this really fascinating. I mean, I don't like it when Jenny and I get into this. We both get triggered. And granted, we have a lot of safety and security in our relationship and skills, and I can step away, take 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, and she can too, to just relax and we can come back together. And there's a lot of trust, not just in my brain, but in my body that we can work through this and relax again together. But if you haven't had that experience very much or ever with anybody in your life, it's going to be really hard to trust that. And it's going to take time and a willing partner. Both people have to be on board with this. It doesn't work if it's just one. There's a lot of work you can do just as an individual to have boundaries, to practice skills, and to change the pattern. But relationally, your partner is also going to have to show up too and learn similar skills and learn how to work with their own activation. And I find that a lot of times if one person is doing a lot of work here and the other one really isn't, the relationship might get better, but there's also going to be more distance in the relationship. You're going to outgrow your partner. And you probably aren't going to want to stay with them if they're not growing too. So I think that's still a good thing because even if you outgrow your partner, you've still grown. And if you separate, you will be more informed as to what you need in a new relationship. But yeah, it really sucks when your partner is not willing to show up. So let's get back to the argument thing, whether you should stay in it or whether you should leave, how long you should stay in it, how to assess all that. The first thing I'd want you to do is to think about how you normally show up in disagreements, and how does your partner show up? Are you the first one to leave most of the time? Are they the first one to leave most of the time? How long are your disagreements typically? Who does most of the talking? Is there one of you that's more likely to approach the other after a conflict and try to repair? Trying to find the balance here. Is there any emotional abuse or name calling during these disagreements on one side, both sides? And so maybe I'll just start there. If there's any emotional abuse happening during the conflict, both of you should stop. And if they're not going to stop, you stop. This is all about damage control. You don't have to put up with anyone calling you names, emotionally abusing you. And if you need to know what emotional abuse is, go watch my other video on emotional abuse. Some people get that wrong. Strong emotion doesn't mean emotional abuse. Sometimes it's just strong emotion. The differences can be subtle, but that's the first step in any conflict is damage control. If we can't be in the same space without hurting each other, then we can't do this. We have not earned the right to fight. Whatever you have to say, it's not okay to be abusive. And you probably need a third party to come in and help you assess what you're doing here and to kind of referee this. Call a foul, look for any power imbalances. Someone who's good at this should be able to call that out. Sometimes one person is more in the wrong than the other. I work with guys who sometimes will sit and just take an immense amount of emotional abuse from their partner. And then they'll come into me and complain about it. And I'm like, why don't you just walk away? You can walk away. You're an adult. And for some reason, sometimes they think they're getting points for just sitting there and taking it. But no one's winning. They're obviously frustrated and resentful and hurt, and their partner's not learning how to treat somebody either. There's no winner. And if you're experiencing emotional abuse, you don't have to be skillful. You can just walk away. Usually when someone's in that place, it doesn't matter if you're like, hey, I need to take 20 minutes and I'm going to go calm down and maybe you can too, and then we can revisit this. If they're in an abusive place, sometimes you just have to stand up to them and say, I'm not taking this shit anymore and I'm leaving. If you're going to call me names, rail against my friends or family, and go on and scream in my face, I'm not going to talk to you. It's okay to say that. And I know that that might make someone more upset, but at least you're not staying in the victim seat and just taking it over and over again. It's okay to stand up for yourself and vice versa. If you're the one that's name calling and your wife's just sitting there and taking it, wake the fuck up. You can't do this in your relationship. This is not going to work. And if she can't stand up for herself, you need to wake up and realize that this isn't helping you or her or your family. This is really hurting everybody. You need a huge wake-up call if this is what you're doing. And my guess is you don't have anyone to call you out on this stuff. No one else knows about it, or else you probably wouldn't be doing it. So this is my best attempt at calling you out through the screen. If you're calling your wife names, I don't care what she said to you, you're fucking up big time. It's not okay, ever. You can remove yourself from a situation. You feel like what she's saying is really not working for you and it's abusive, but it still doesn't give you the right to throw it back. You need to get some help for you and for the relationship. There's obviously very little accountability in the relationship. So that's the layer of emotional safety. Now, if there's enough emotional safety, you're having a disagreement and you're the one that's more likely to walk away, the move for you is going to be to stay in it a little bit longer. And I don't mean just physically sit there. I mean, that's part of it. But emotionally, if you feel like you're disconnecting emotionally, you're always the first one to do that. My practice for you would be to stay in the conversation, try to open your heart more, to listen more, and just see if you can grow your capacity to be in it. And I'm thinking about timing wise, like if you're out of there within a few minutes, usually stay in for another 10 or 20 and just see if you can give your partner what they're asking for, which is probably high quality attention and reflection and validation and curiosity. Just try it. Drop the defenses just for a few minutes. I promise you it's going to be okay. Guys have a really hard time dropping their sword, but you have to learn to surrender sometimes in relationship. If you always have your sword with you and your armor on, your partner's probably never going to feel safe with you. You have to learn how to drop it sometimes. in this relationship. In other relationships, sometimes you just got to have it with you, right? You have parents or you have work relationships that are contentious. And yeah, great. If you need to wear your armor all the time and have your sword, go ahead. But in this relationship, your most important relationship, you have to be able to drop it sometimes and trust yourself and trust your partner. You're an adult. You can handle words that are uncomfortable. You can handle seeing emotions that are uncomfortable for you. This is something we can actually work on as men. And I get that it's hard. I've had to do this hundreds of times now. My instinct is to pick up the sword, have the armor on, and get ready for battle. And the quicker that I can drop that, the more my wife starts to relax. And then we can come together slowly but surely and really work on reconnecting. But unfortunately, I can't have both. I can't have my armor and my sword and have my wife feel safe at the same time. I just look threatening and I sound threatening. My face looks threatening. My body language is threatening or unavailable. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you if you're the one who leaves first. Most of the time, you're the more avoidant one. Now, if you're the more anxious one and you find yourself constantly moving towards your partner while she moves away, the move for you is going to be to lean back and just get into your own body and space. Practice giving her a little space and see what happens. Hopefully this makes sense logically, right? Like if every time you lean in to try to fix things or talk about things and you feel her just take a step away, why do you keep doing that? It's obviously not working. And you can't make her step towards you, but at least you can try something new. Come back into your own space, get grounded, give yourself positive affirmations. You're a good person. You're just trying to work this out. You have a lot of energy in your body, anxiety and fear. It's helpful to have friends that you can call when you're in this place to help regulate you if you can't co-regulate with your partner yet, and just see how she responds. And it might not be immediate. I know the anxious people want the quickest result possible all the time as far as connection goes. It might take 20 minutes, it might take a few hours, but see if she approaches you, see if she leans in more. This might be the one thing that changes the pattern, is for you to just get back in your space. Because if she feels like you have this void within you that she has to fill and she feels that pressure over and over again, she might just get tired of it. And she might not have the words to express what she's feeling, but it might feel smothering. It might feel overwhelming. And she still has to do her work to be able to handle some of that sometimes, but help her out, help make it easier. You're both trying to grow your capacity to be with your own internal experiences and whatever's happening in the relationship. So you can say, hey, I realize sometimes I kind of come in here and I try to fix real quick or rescue you. And maybe that's not feeling good for you. So I'm just going to take some space. And then how about you come to me when you want to talk about this again? And I'm just going to practice giving you space here. That might really feel good for her. And I think as a general rule, 24 hours is as long as I'd want anyone to go without revisiting something or getting help. But yeah, it's okay if she takes the rest of the day to just sit with it and to regulate herself, to not think about what you're needing for a few hours. And if she does return and you're able to talk about it and it goes a little bit better, great, that's a win. And if not, and if she just totally disappears, well, it's just highlighting what's already there, right? And it could be helpful to get some third-party advice. But either way, getting back in your own space in this situation is going to highlight what's there. It's going to highlight the truth. If the reality is that your partner has really no interest in connecting with you, like she's done with the relationship, unfortunately, you probably want to realize that sooner than later. You might be able to keep a relationship afloat by just your efforts for years even. But is that really the way that you want to do relationship? Probably not. It's exhausting. So I think that's all I have to say about when to stay or go when there is a disagreement, a conflict, a fight. And if you want help practicing these skills, you can join one of the men's groups that I run. You can find it on my website, www.brycebauer.com. We practice all this stuff, talk about all this stuff. It's more affordable than therapy, and there's a great group of guys in there. So check it out. And I will talk to you next time. Peace.